When most people think about ancient Rome, the first images that come to mind are gladiators in the arena, senators in white togas debating laws, or mighty legions marching across Europe. Yet behind the grand monuments and serious politics, the Romans were people too, with the same need for laughter, play, and even a good prank. Humor was a vital part of daily life, and the streets of Rome were filled not only with trade and chatter, but also with jokes, tricks, and playful mischief. In fact, the Romans enjoyed laughter so much that they considered it both a source of entertainment and a sign of intelligence. Writers like Cicero, Martial, and Juvenal recorded witty lines, playful sarcasm, and clever insults that circulated among the people. But beyond the written word, there were also practical jokes, the kind of mischief that would not feel out of place in our own time. Let us imagine walking through a Roman street, narrow and crowded, with taverns on either side. Among the vendors shouting about fresh olives or hot bread, you might suddenly hear a burst of laughter. A man is tricked into drinking a cup of wine that has been secretly diluted with far too much water. Someone else finds their sandals tied together while bathing, stumbling as they try to put them back on. These were the everyday pranks of Roman society, small, harmless jokes that brought a spark of amusement to a busy world. Food and drink were common targets for humor. In an era when meals were communal and wine was often shared, people sometimes enjoyed switching cups or slipping odd ingredients into a friend's dish. A common joke was to serve fish sauce, the strong-smelling garum, in unexpected places, catching the unsuspecting diner with a shock of taste and smell. In taverns, there are stories of waiters or friends swapping out good wine with sour leftovers, laughing as the victim took their first sip. For the Romans, a banquet was not only about eating, but also about entertainment, and playful tricks were part of the atmosphere. Public baths, which were central to Roman social life, were another hotspot for jokes. Imagine the crowded, steamy rooms where people gathered not only to wash, but to gossip and relax. Here, pranks were easy to play. Slipping someone's towel out of reach, hiding their sandals, or giving a playful splash were simple ways to cause laughter. The baths were communal, and laughter echoed as much as conversation. For the Romans, such tricks were rarely seen as malicious. Instead, they were part of the playful teasing that bound people together. But Roman humor went beyond the simple physical prank. Wordplay, satire, and graffiti were powerful tools of laughter. In Pompeii, archaeologists discovered walls covered with jokes scratched by ordinary citizens. Some inscriptions were lighthearted, mocking friends, declaring silly messages of love, or leaving witty remarks about tavern keepers. One famous graffito, written on a bar wall, reads, "We have wet the bed. I admit you were wrong, dear innkeeper." If you ask why, there was no chamber pot. Such humor, crude yet direct, shows the everyday laughter of Roman life. Even in more serious settings, humor found its way. The Forum, Rome's political heart, was often filled with satirical commentary. Citizens joked about politicians, mocking their habits, voices, or appearances. Poets like Martial made a career out of sharp epigrams, short, witty verses that ridiculed the powerful or celebrated the ridiculous. In this way, humor acted as both entertainment and subtle resistance, giving ordinary people a way to laugh at those above them. Yet the most playful and free-spirited pranks were saved for festivals, especially Saturnalia, a winter celebration where the usual rules of society were turned upside down. During these days, slaves were allowed to mock their masters. People exchanged gag gifts, and practical jokes were everywhere. It was a season of freedom, where laughter replaced order, and the city itself seemed to join in the mischief. What becomes clear is that humor was woven into every layer of Roman society. From taverns and baths to graffiti-covered walls, pranks and jokes brought color to daily life. They allowed Romans to escape, if only briefly, from the seriousness of empire and politics. They reminded everyone, from slaves to senators, that life was not only about power and duty, but also about joy and laughter. As we close this first part of our journey, we can already sense that the Romans were not so different from us. They loved to tease their friends, play tricks with food, write silly messages on walls, and laugh during festivals. Their humor was sometimes crude, sometimes clever, but always human. And in this way, the sound of laughter has echoed across the centuries, reminding us that even in the great Roman Empire, people enjoyed the simple fun of a good prank. If everyday jokes in taverns and baths brought laughter to the Roman people, the real stage for mischief came during public festivals. Among these, none was more famous for pranks and playful chaos than Saturnalia, the December festival in honor of the god Saturn. Saturnalia was a time when normal rules were overturned, and the city became a playground of jokes, surprises, and laughter. Masters served their slaves. People wore colorful clothing instead of togas. Gambling was allowed, and gift-giving filled the streets. But the most memorable part of Saturnalia was the humor. Pranks between friends, mocking songs, and witty exchanges. Imagine the scene. A Roman noble reclining at his dining couch, only to be served a humble dish of beans instead of the fine delicacy he expected, while his servant laughs and offers him more. Or consider the master who opens a gift box to find a gag present, perhaps a lump of coal or a cheap figurine, instead of the treasure he anticipated. Saturnalia made these moments acceptable, even expected, reminding Romans that laughter could level social barriers, if only for a few days each year. Public entertainment was also ripe with humor. In the amphitheater, where gladiators and wild beasts usually inspired awe or fear, the audience sometimes played tricks on performers. There are accounts of spectators shouting absurd advice, mocking fighters, or throwing unexpected items into the arena just to watch reactions. While the stakes of combat were serious, Romans could not resist the urge to laugh, even in such dramatic spaces. Satire, parody, and exaggerated gestures made their way into performances, and professional entertainers often specialized in provoking laughter alongside amazement. On the streets, ordinary pranks were simple but effective. Roman pranksters enjoyed startling passers-by, sometimes with sudden noises, sometimes by splashing water or dropping small objects from windows above. In busy marketplaces, a mischievous merchant might exaggerate the quality of his goods in such an obvious way that it became a joke, turning commerce into comedy. Children, too, had their share of playful tricks, tying knots in each other's clothing or pretending to sell nonsense items for a few coins. Another fascinating aspect of Roman humor comes from their graffiti, which archaeologists have uncovered in remarkable abundance. Pompeii, in particular, offers a treasure trove of jokes scratched into walls. Some are crude, some sarcastic, and some surprisingly witty. One wall reads, "We two dear men, friends forever, were here. If you want to know our names, they are Gaius and Aldus." Another mocks a tavern owner. "I wonder, innkeeper, why you serve such watery wine when you have the river so close." These lines, frozen in time, remind us that humor was not only spoken, but written into the fabric of daily life, immortalized for centuries to come. Roman writers also recorded biting jokes aimed at politics and society. Martial, the poet of witty epigrams, delighted in skewering the vanity of the rich, the hypocrisy of officials, and the silliness of everyday people. His verses were short, sharp, and often mocking, showing that even in a society of emperors and senators, humor was a way to cut through pretense and reveal truth. Cicero, the statesman, was famous for his sarcastic remarks, and even in the Senate, laughter was a weapon as much as a relief. Perhaps what is most striking is how familiar these pranks feel. A slave mocking his master during Saturnalia sounds like a playful reversal we might see in modern office parties. Jokes about watered-down wine are not so different from today's complaints about bad service. Children tying knots or swapping food at banquets echo playground pranks or family jokes that happen anywhere in the world. Despite the distance of 2,000 years, the laughter of the Romans feels close to us, carrying the same rhythm of surprise, wit, and shared amusement. Of course, not every Roman enjoyed being the victim of a prank. Some writings hint at annoyance or even anger when jokes went too far. But for the most part, humor was tolerated, even celebrated, as part of the balance of life. Romans believed that laughter was good for the soul, a release from stress, and a reminder that even the mighty could be brought low by a simple joke. This perspective reveals a society that valued not only power and discipline, but also joy and levity. As we conclude our journey through Roman pranks and jokes, let us reflect on what these playful moments tell us. They show that beneath the grandeur of the empire, the seriousness of military campaigns, and the weight of political debates, there existed a vibrant culture of humor. Laughter crossed social classes, filled public spaces, and became part of festivals, taverns, and even walls. Humor was a language that everyone understood, from slaves to senators, uniting them in a shared experience of fun. The story of Roman pranks is not just about tricks with food, splashes in the baths, or witty graffiti. It is about the universality of laughter, the timeless human need to find joy in the ordinary and to poke fun at the world around us. It reminds us that across centuries and empires, humor has been one of the strongest threads connecting people. And so, as we leave behind the streets of Rome, the laughter of children, the witty verses of poets, and the playful chaos of Saturnalia, we can carry with us the simple truth that humor is eternal. Just as the Romans laughed together 2,000 years ago, so too do we laugh today, bridging time with the same spark of joy. In the end, pranks and jokes were not only entertainment for the Romans, they were a celebration of life itself.